Okay, ladies, today we're going to look at the female urogenital system, and I haven't made any cuts to the pig since cutting open the thoracic cavity and the abdominal cavity. So when you first take a look at the female urogenital system, something that you've already found the other day were the kidneys. And so when I look back here, I see my kidney, and it has a layer of film on it. And remember, we said that every cavity in the body is separated by some kind of a mucosal lining, basically. So when I pull that back, I don't know if you can see what I'm doing, but I hope so. I'm kind of poking it with my pointer, and I'm moving that film back that's housing the kidney, and I'm doing so because I can pull out the ureter. So here's the ureter, and you can see that it connects to the kidney, and the ureter is responsible for transporting urine that was produced by the kidney to the urinary bladder, which we know is between the two umbilical arteries. Now, another part of the urogenital system, notice it's called urogenital because uro referring to urine production, genital referring to reproductive. So let's move on to some reproductive organs. So this little bean structure that we see here, that's an ovary, and we have another structure here, that's the ovary. If I hold the ovaries up, let me see if I can do that. If I hold the ovary up, I can see, let me use the other pointer, I can see that it's very curly here. So these fallopian tubes, the first part of it is the uterine horn. So this is the left side of my pig, so this would be the left uterine horn. If I look at my other ovary, I can see the curlicued piece right here, which is the right uterine horn. These uterine horns are going to lead to the uterus. So once I have this open, I can just take my tweezers and lift up, and down there is the uterus. So let's see if we can kind of zoom in there. That bag structure that we see where the two fallopian tubes meet, that's my uterus. And the uterus has the ability to expand. So you can see when it expands, it puts pressure on the bladder, which causes a lot of women to feel like they've got to urinate all the time when they're pregnant. So another thing I want to point out is behind the umbilical cord, you also have this clear film that you can penetrate, and you can kind of poke through there. Behind here, we're going to be able to see the urethra and the vagina. So I'm gonna basically separate those two out. Scissor to do that. So when I cut that, it allows me to open up this completely. So right now what I can see pretty clearly is from the bladder we can see that there's a continuation of tubules. That opening is where the urine will exit. So the urine's leaving the urinary bladder through the urethra. Okay, ladies, where we left off before, we were just kind of opening up between these two, and we had identified this as our bladder. We had indicated that this is our uterus. Now, what you're going to be able to see once we start to pull away all of this connective tissue, you're going to be able to start to see each of these features independently. Now, what I'm going to do is cut through this region. And I'm going to cut through the skin and some muscle, and that will help me expose both of those areas. So I'll cut a little bit and then a little bit more. Remember, you can always go deeper. It's best to start shallow. And you might actually feel a little bit of bone. Right here. And there's a little bit of bone right there. So now I can really see the separation between the urethra and the vagina. And then the rectum, I can follow the rectum out and I can see where the vagina and the uterus meet. Now this is just connective tissue that can be broken. So it's important to kind of distinguish here. This right here, this is my bladder. It's leading to the urethra. The urethra comes down and it exits out of the urogenital sinus down here. Fallopian tubes unite with the uterus where the growing embryo would be, and that leads us down to the vagina. So the vagina is here, the urethra is there. Okay, ladies, today we're going to look at the male's urogenital system, and it's called urogenital because, again, it's combining the urinary system or the excretory system with the reproductive system. So first I'm going to locate the kidney, and as I do that, it's behind a film, which is another cavity that separates our organs. So I'm going to just take my pointer, and I'm using quite a blunt one, to separate that out. So hopefully you can see this thin film that we have here. And as I do that, I'm exposing the kidney, again, just as we did in the female, and I'm going to locate the ureter. And the ureter is this tubule here, and it's transporting urine from the kidney, so the kidney is responsible for producing that, transports the urine down to the urinary bladder. So if we continue to follow that down, I can see a couple of arteries there, but if I continue to follow that down, it's going to lead to the bladder. So remember, this is my urinary bladder, and I'm also going to have a second ureter on the other side. Now, that bladder is going to hold urine, and the urine is eventually going to be released out of the urogenital sinus. You remember in the female, the urogenital opening. You remember in the female, the urogenital opening was below the urogenital papilla, but the male doesn't have that. So that would lead us to think that the ureters leading to the urinary bladder, we should have the urethra here somewhere. So we're going to locate the urethra in this situation as well. So with this being a male, you can look down here and you don't really see the ovaries like we saw before, but there are testes here. We just have to locate them. So I'm going to look behind the rectum and kind of move it to the side. The rectum is kind of large in this particular pig, and I'm going to take this sharp pointer and kind of cut away at some of the film that we have here. And I'm looking for the testes. Okay, ladies, we're going to basically look for the scrotal sacs, and you can see them here, and we're going to cut through the skin of the scrotal sac, and we're going to be looking for our testes from this vantage point. So I'm going to kind of just grab a hold of the skin because I don't want to cut anything else, and this will allow me to cut just the skin without making an incision anywhere else. Now if you look right down in there, you can see very clearly that there's two different colored looking, and yours may not be the same color, but I can see that there's something there, and that particular structure is what we're looking for. So what I'm going to do at this moment is continue to cut my skin, and I can see that there's a little bit of film there, again, some connective tissue, and I'm going to continue to open that up so you can see what that looks like, and I'm going to cut kind of over to the side, and so basically through skin, but not through anything that looks like it could be a structure. So now I'm going to use my blunt pointer, and I'm going to start to just kind of wear away some of this connective tissue. So I can see muscle, I can see lots of other things. And I'm going to pull this structure out. And as I pull this structure out, I'm going to be able to locate a couple of things here. One of them being my testy. So you might be able to see this bean structure here. This would be the testy, but it's covered in a film as well. So I'm going to remove that film. And as I remove that film, I'm going to expose the epididymis. The epididymis is a bunch of coiled, it should remind you of the female a little bit. This is a little bit tedious because it's very slippery. Okay, ladies, so here we are with the male completely opened up, cut through the bone. So you'll cut through muscle, you'll see this, and you'll see it looks a little mutilated here, but there's bone, there's a pubic bone here that you have to cut through in order to expose this area. So again, just to reorient, this is the testy. And so we were removing some of the film, and I had removed some of it, but I wanted you to be able to see how thin it is. It's very thin, and if I remove that, and I'm going to use my scissors to do so to expose the epididymis. So I'm getting my scissors way down in there, and when I do that, now I can see the testy is completely exposed. And as that testy is exposed, I see that on the top of it, hold on, let me turn this around. Let's see where it is. You can see this epididymis structure. Doesn't exactly look the way that it should over here. Maybe we'll look at the other one. Here's part of it, I believe, this little hump thing here, but it should continue over the testy. So we'll open this up and we'll take a look. This structure here that we see is the urethra. And if we follow that up, it should lead to the urinary bladder. Next to it, you have this little piece here, and it's much shorter. You can see how long it is. That particular structure is the bulbourethral gland. And just to give you an idea, here's the scrotum, here's the other testy. If I pull that out, and I can remove the film and look for the epididymis there. It should be, the epididymis should lie on top. So I'm thinking that's part of it. It doesn't look the way that I've seen it in the past. So you can see that that's completely